Hello. If you were looking for a scare tonight, you've come to the right place. I'll be narrating an hour's worth of creepy horror stories that I found off of Reddit. So without further ado,
These are their stories.
Last year, I worked at a laundromat near my parents before I moved away to college. I saw the advert in the window when I was shopping with my dad, and figured it was an easy way to earn some money. The woman who ran the laundromat interviewed me, and I started that same day, but not before she introduced me to her daughter, who also worked there. She was called Mia, was really petite and really odd. The first time I met her, she immediately said, "Hey, can you do this?" Then she did this weird thing with her eyes that made them vibrate. It's hard to explain, like they were rapidly moving side to side, and the whole time she had this toothy smile on her face like it was the most amazing thing in the world. Mia must have only been a year or two younger than me, so still in her teens, but her behavior seemed really juvenile and kind of try hard. Anyway, I just figured she was trying to break the ice in her own way, so just kind of rolled with it. I got through the rest of the day with just small talk and didn't think too much of it. I was barely a week into the job when I first caught her hiding inside one of the machines. She somehow managed to climb up and curl herself up in one of the big tumble dryers. I wouldn't have even noticed had I not walked past and heard her giggling inside the drum, scaring the crap out of me. "What are you doing?" I asked, annoyed she was dicking around whilst I was working my butt off. Her large eyes watched me in the darkness, her legs pressed up against her flat chest. "I'm just cleaning it." "Right, okay." I'd literally cleaned the lint out of the machine just this morning, so didn't buy her lies for 1 minute. Anyway, she climbed out of the machine like a creepy gymnast shortly after, earning a few strange glances from some of the customers, but no one was hurt. The next time was worse. About 3 days later, I was helping this young mom set up a load of laundry after her machine broke in her apartment. It was her first time in a laundromat, so she didn't really know where to start and had brought her kid along too, although she wasn't doing a very good job of keeping an eye on him. I just finished walking her through the different powders, prices, and settings when I heard that same eerie, echoing giggle again towards the back of the store, only this time it was followed by a child's laughter. As soon as I heard the sound, I had a weird hitching feeling in my gut. Although I'd only known Mia for about a week, I knew leaving a random kid with her would be like leaving them unattended by an open electrical socket. Anything could happen. "Sorry, I'll be right back," I said to the mom, leaving her to load her washing into the machine. Most of the machines in the laundromat were 10-kilogram washing machines. We also had a few larger 18-kilogram machines, and one massive front-loaded 33-kilogram machine used for washing duvets, etc., which Mia's mom had affectionately christened the Beast. The whole time I'd worked there, I'd never seen it used once, yet I found Mia half inside the Beast that day. Playing with the kid stood in front of it. Her bottom half was inside the drum, elbows resting on the rubber seal with the door open as she handed quarters to the boy. She was pulling funny faces and doing that weird thing with her eyes again, making him laugh. The sight made me freeze for a second, wondering what the hell she was playing at. I heard the boy ask her, "What do I do?" Just close the door," she explained, and pressed the big red button. It was only then I realized she was trying to bribe the kid into locking her inside the machine and switching it on. "Mia," I hissed, hurrying through the maze of machines to confront her. "But what will it do?" the little boy asked her. "I'll go on an exciting ride." I finally reached the door and grabbed it, putting an end to the madness. Both Mia and the kid looked annoyed, like I'd interrupted a great game of theirs. "What did you think you were doing?" I snapped. "It was just a little fun, right, kiddo?" The boy laughed as Mia tousled his hair before he finally scampered off back to his mother, who was still piling dirty underwear into the machine at the other end of the store, oblivious. "Hey, just chill," Mia said, sensing my anger as she slid out of the machine. He wasn't really going to do it. I shook my head and walked away, knowing the kind of stuff my own little brother would do for a few dollars. Later that day, Mia's mom came out of her office to check on us, and I thought about ratting Mia out right there and then, but the way she seemed to always dote on her strange daughter like the sun shone out of herself made me pause. Why would she believe me over her own flesh and blood? After all, I hadn't even made my first paycheck yet, and I really needed the money. That thought alone ultimately made me decide to just let it slide. I didn't know how much I'd come to regret not bailing right there and then. A few days later, Mia and I were both working the evening shift. It was nearing closing time and the place was dead. I was just putting a damp sock in the lost and found basket when she appeared at my shoulder and asked, "Do you like me?" I frowned and focused on the sock. "Yeah, of course." I knew I'd over-egged the lie as soon as it left my mouth, but I wanted to keep the job at least until college started. Then why do you never look me in the eye? I forced myself to turn away from the basket and finally face her. What do you mean? Do you like me? Her face had a sudden seriousness to it. Whenever I'd seen her before, she'd always had the ghost of a smile on her lips and a playful look in her eye, but now she looked almost disappointed in me somehow. My mouth felt dry as I croaked out a yes. Liar. I felt my awkwardness switch to fear as she did that weird vibrating thing with her eyes again, only this time they seemed to pull mine in. It was like I had tunnel vision all of a sudden. I tried to take a step back, but my legs felt cut off from my brain. Instead, they followed her as she slowly walked backwards towards the row of machines lining the rear wall. Panic set in as I realized she was leading us straight towards the beast. The playful look on her face returned as she sensed my fear. "Don't worry," she said, her voice sounding like it was at the end of a tunnel. "It's just a little fun." Her vibrating eyes never left mine as we reached the huge machine. She opened the door at her back and started to climb in. In my periphery, I saw her arms and legs contort in a nightmarish way. The whole time her head stayed fixed in space, her eyes now the center of my universe. Once she'd crawled inside, her voice called to me from the darkness of the drum. "Close the door and switch it on. Wash cycle, max spin." I felt powerless to obey. I watched as my arms closed the door and programmed the cycle. The panic inside of me rose, making me feel like I'd vomit if I still had control over my body. As my finger hovered over the start switch, I held onto one last sliver of hope. The cycle wouldn't start without money, and I was fresh out of quarters. Yet as she ordered me to start the machine and the button clunked home and the door locked without any complaints, I realized she'd already preloaded the coins. The sick creep had planned this right from the start. I heard the machine fill with water and felt tears spring into my eyes as I realized I was about to watch someone drown to death in the worst possible way. The drum part filled to her chin, but Mia never took her eyes off of me, not even as the machine started to spin. I didn't know if it was the trance-like state she'd put me in, or if her neck wasn't human, but her head filled that thick glass door and never rotated an inch. I remember watching a nature documentary on birds of prey and how owls' heads remain stable in flight to better track their prey, and Mia's face reminded me of exactly that, just this pale, big, black-eyed face staring back at me through the glass. She must have forced me to stand like that, watching her drown for a good half hour, because I remember the floor starting to shake as the machine hit its spin cycle. The drum whirled about her horrid face like an optical illusion, pulling me in and never letting me go until finally, the sudden surge of power caused the lights overhead to flicker. My eyes lost sight of hers for a moment in the darkness, and I blinked for the first time in what felt like an eternity. The top halves of my eyeballs felt like dry gritted glass as they finally slid down on the tears collecting below. Suddenly, in control of my own body again, I flung a hand over my eyes and looked away. I heard Mia calling to me from the machine, trying to get me to look at her again, but I wasn't falling for it. My brain felt foggy and my legs felt drunk. For a split second, I thought about trying to switch the beast off before realizing it wouldn't work mid-cycle, and it'd only release the true monster currently trapped inside of it. Whatever Mia was, clearly wasn't human, and I dreaded to think what she'd had planned for me next. I remember half running, half stumbling past her mom's office door, praying it wouldn't open in case she tranced me too. Thankfully, I managed to stifle my sobs and it stayed shut, leaving me to slip out the laundromat door into the night. I never went back again. When my parents asked why I quit, I told them I needed more time to focus on my studies instead, which seemed to shut them up. A couple of days ago, I finally mustered up the courage to look up the laundromat on Google Maps Street View. I didn't know if I was hoping to see if the store had closed, or if anyone had left any bad reviews complaining about the creepy teenage girl that worked there, but I found neither. Instead, all I saw was what looked like another ad for hire in the window and the silhouette of a small woman with bleached blonde hair staring out the window. I didn't know if that was Mia or just a bored customer, but I closed that browser window real quick. I'd hoped telling my story on here would somehow help me to process it, but now I've told it I don't really feel any better. I still can't use the dorm laundromat because every time I close the machine door, I see her creepy owl-like face staring back at me. I'm either hand washing or buying new clothes these days, which is breaking my bank account. I think I need help. Maybe I should see someone. Hey man, I don't know how to tell you this, but there's people in the basement. Chris's words were in between silence and a whisper. I sat up in the bed, my eyes adjusting to the frantic figure in front of me. What? I asked him. What are you talking about? Be quiet, dude, he whispered. There's people in the basement, like 6 of them, I swear to God. He paused, taking a few deep breaths. We should get out of here. I rubbed my eyes, trying to get the fatigue to settle so I could comprehend the magnitude of what he was saying. For context, my friends and I had booked an Airbnb near the mountains for the weekend, hike and then drink, get our minds off of work and school. I had been super tired after hiking, so I'd taken a nap. I shook my head. You went down into the basement? I asked. We weren't supposed to. They told us not to. Yeah, dude, I know, Chris continued, but I did it anyway and I saw people down there and we need to leave ASAP. What kind of people? I asked, pretty much fully awake now. You mean the owners of this place? They came back? Chris shook his head. Number not them. Weird looking people, creepy people. I sat up thinking that maybe Chris had taken some of the LSD we'd been saving for the next day. Dude, relax, I told him. Explain exactly what you saw. He laid it out pretty concisely. Despite the fact that the people who had posted the listing had explicitly told us not to go down there, Chris had gotten drunk, gotten curious, and went down there. To his surprise, the door had been unlocked. He couldn't find the light switch, but there was just enough of it coming through the windows for him to be able to make his way down the stairs. Arriving at the bottom, he allowed his eyes a few seconds to adjust, and right in front of him, he could see a small table with about 6 people sitting around it, their outlines illustrated by the afternoon light. At first, his brain rationalized it as large dolls or puppets that had been placed there, but he continued looking at them, and eventually one of them turned their heads to face him. He didn't stick around after that and shot up the stairs, shutting the door behind him. As he told me this, I kind of didn't want to believe him, but there was also absolutely no reason why he'd be lying. He just wasn't that type of guy. Coupled with the genuine terror on his face, I began leaning towards the idea that he was telling the truth, and that were actually a bunch of people sitting silent at a table in the darkness of the basement. I got up and looked out the bedroom window, seeing Jay and Paul standing on the front porch, grilling burgers. Then I looked back at Chris. If you're telling the truth, we need to call the people who own the place. I tried, he said. They didn't pick up. I've sent them texts as well. I shook my head. So what? You think they're dangerous? Should we call the cops? Chris shrugged. I don't know, he said. I don't know if they're dangerous, but they didn't look right and I want to get out of here. For a while, we stared at each other, the general silence of the house becoming progressively more ominous. After a while, I sighed. Yeah, let's get out of here. We grabbed our phones, wallets, the car keys, and moved down the stairs, out of the house as fast as we could. Jay and Paul were laughing, holding beers as we approached them. Paul turned around, pointing a greasy spatula towards us. You guys hungry or what? He asked. Chris began telling them what he'd seen, but it was obvious that they were more than a few drinks deep and not taking anything he was saying seriously. Dude, it sounds like you're tripping, Jay said. Are you sure you're not tripping? I'm being serious, Chris said. I swear to God I'm serious. We need to get out of here now. Well, I'm about 5 beers in, so I ain't driving, Jay said. And I sure ain't letting any of you drive my truck either. Are you sure you just weren't seeing stuff? Fine, I'm walking then, Chris said. I'm not staying here. Look, I'll go down there and talk to them, Paul said, half joking. See what the hell they want. Jay laughed as sheer disbelief washed over Chris's face. I'm not lying, man, he said. I'm not. Yeah, I believe you, Paul said dismissively. I'll go and see what's up. Chris continued to protest, but Paul wouldn't budge and soon he was inside the house, making his way towards the basement. Chris shook his head, his eyes wide, nearly bulging out of his head at this point. Screw this, he yelled, seeming to grow more agitated by the second. I warned you. Before we could say anything else, he bolted, sprinting like a bat out of hell towards the woods. We tried chasing after him, but couldn't come close to matching his pace. We stopped, panting for air as he watched him disappear into the trees. What the? Jay asked. Is he being serious? I thought it was a joke. I shook my head. Let's go check on Paul. We ran back to the house, entering to see the basement door wide open. The place was completely silent, but before I could call out, I could hear somebody moving up the stairs. I backed up, unsure of what to expect, how to react, when Paul came out of the darkness, looking somewhat bewildered. He looked at us, shook his head. This is freaky, man, he said. Was he being for real? Jay asked. There's people down there. Not exactly. The three of us went down there with my nerves yet to be completely settled. We couldn't find a light switch, but there were enough windows and enough daylight for us to move around. Turns out Chris hadn't been totally correct, but he probably hadn't been lying either. Planted right in front of the stairs was a table with 3 chairs. Sitting in those 3 chairs were some of the most lifelike sculptures I'd ever seen. 2 soldiers in what appeared to be old military outfits and a woman in some kind of long religious dress. They weren't quite enough to be uncanny. If you looked at them for more than a few seconds, you could tell that they were carved from stone and then meticulously painted, something you could confirm by touching them. Still, they were exceptionally crafted, something that could have only been achieved by a dedicated professional. I mean, I don't blame him, Paul said, referring to Chris. I almost shat bricks when I first saw them. I mean, what? I remembered back to the conversation I'd had with him, how he claimed that one of them had actually looked at him and then a shiver ran down my spine. Jay laughed, a palpable relief in his voice. How much you think we could sell these for? I'm down to take them and find out, Paul joked. On the surface, it made enough sense. The homeowners were in possession of some very valuable items that they stored in the basement, simply forgetting to lock it this time around. Jay and Paul continued looking at them, taking pictures, marveling at how weird it all was. On the other hand, I wasn't so keen on doing so. I wanted to get the hell out of the basement ASAP. The details just weren't adding up. I knew Chris well. If the only thing he'd seen had been these statues, he would not have reacted the way he did. Jay was looking at his phone, smiling at the pictures he'd taken, when suddenly his expression dropped. He put his phone down and looked ahead. "There's another one over there," he said, "in the corner." "What do you mean?" Paul asked, looking closely at one of the soldiers' rifles. "Another statue in the corner." Paul looked up and looked towards where Jay was pointing. "Oh," he said, "yeah, I see it." The two of them continued to look at it but showed no indication of wanting to explore it. Instead, they stood still, their expressions slowly being taken over by a look of deep unease. Eventually, I looked as well. It did appear to be a statue, something tucked away in one of the very dark corners. It was tall, extremely so, maybe 7 feet, its head well eclipsing the top of one of the bookshelves. Its bottom half was completely obscured, but from what the light was revealing, it was wearing some kind of helmet, like one those steel ones soldiers were equipped with back in World War I. There came a point as my eyes were adjusting to the darkness where a pit began to form in my stomach. Its features were slowly revealing themselves and it almost looked as if it were twitching. I thought that maybe it was just the darkness playing tricks until I saw it blink. Clear as day it blinked. I guess the other two saw the same thing because we were practically trampling each other running up the stairs. We slammed the door shut behind us before quickly pushing one of the couches in front of it. Paul and I were halfway out the front door, but Jay was still inside the house. "What the hell are you doing?" Paul yelled at him. "Come on." "I need my laptop," Jay said before throwing Paul his keys. "I'll be quick, start the truck." He ran up the stairs while Paul continued to curse at him. "Really, dude, are you serious?" And then I remembered my own laptop, thinking about how annoying it would be if I were to lose it. I looked at the basement door, then at the stairs, then at Paul. "It's gonna take 5 seconds, I said. I could hear him cursing behind me as I ran, jumping 3 steps at a time until I reached my room, darting in and grabbing my laptop from the desk. As I rushed out of there, I saw that the door to Jay's room was shut. I stopped, slowed my breathing. I was almost certain that he hadn't gone back downstairs. I would have seen or heard him. I approached the door. "Jay," I asked, "the hell are you doing?" No response. I looked at the door, but every muscle was frozen, almost as if my body were warning me not to go in. Suddenly, it creaked open just slightly, and I jumped back. "Jay," I asked. Still no response. I couldn't see anything through the crack until my eyes drifted upwards near the ceiling. A pair of eyes looking down at me, large eyes set too far apart on a face with skin that was too pale. I turned and bolted back downstairs as I heard the door swing open the rest of the way. Of course, I didn't look back and ran outside and jumped into the passenger seat of the truck. "Where is he?" Paul asked. "Just drive," I told him. He didn't protest and stepped on the gas, ripping down the dirt road. We continued driving until we reached a rest stop, the first place with other people. By that point, we had both called and messaged the homeowners about a dozen times each. Nothing but radio silence on the other end. We even noticed that the listing itself had been removed from Airbnb entirely. And then we called the police. Somebody answered and I explained the situation as in-depth as I could. The operator listened without interrupting, interrupting, waited a few seconds, and then asked me for the address. I told it to her. Another bout of silence elapsed before she hung up. After arriving back in the city, we considered reporting it again, but neither of us felt the nerve to do so. We also haven't heard from Chris. We've gone to his apartment and knocked on his door, but nobody answers. I tried to do some research on the place, googling the cabin's address. One result came up, a website that appeared to consist solely of an album of black and white images of soldiers standing in various places with dates and addresses written beneath them in small text. I Control F'd and found the address I was looking for. The accompanying photo was of a tall soldier holding a blood-stained hatchet and standing in a clearing surrounded by trees, with the outline of a cabin behind him. The man's skin was pale, his eyes oddly large and set so wide apart that it just didn't look right. There were also two dates attached to it, August 17, 1915, and the date that we had first arrived at the cabin. It's been about a week removed from the incident, and Paul and I have both made a mutual decision to drop it, to try and go back to our ordinary lives. But it's been difficult. I keep expecting to receive a phone call from the cops, asking me questions about Chris and Jay, where I'd last seen them. Those guys have family. They probably knew where they were headed and who they'd gone with, and yet nobody's reaching out. It doesn't feel like we're out of the clear here. It doesn't feel like this is over at all. On December 21, 2017, sheriff deputies responded to a wellness check in the general area of Tehachapi, California. The call came from the mother of a minor child who stated that the child's uncle had lured them out there to attack without provocation. The man attacked and gave chase, going so far as to pursue their car on foot as she drove away. Officers located the man and quickly noted that his behavior was vacillated wildly. Initially, he launched himself at the officers, only to pull back, fall to his knees, and beg for help. He introduced himself as Catalin and asked for help again, only to cut off and begin screaming the following phrase: "Screw you, Robert, screw you, Robert, screw you." Catalin was booked into the central receiving facility. Catalin's appearance was of great concern. Most disturbingly, both his chest and abdomen kept bulging and receding, rolling like waves. Whenever one of these waves crested, Catalin choked and his eyes turned a strange but unmistakable yellow hue. Shortly after booking, Catalin asked for a chaplain. This request was denied. Shortly after denial, Catalin flew into what was assumed to be a substance-induced frenzy, wherein he tore the metal grating off his cell and proceeded to vomit copious amounts of dark, foul-smelling fluid. The volume of vomit was so significant it covered all of the cell floor and much of the hallway beyond. Officers noted that Catalin's eyes were glowing yellow. A chaplain was called. Catalin said he didn't know how to pray but needed someone to pray for him. The chaplain asked why, to which Catalin responded that he was possessed. The chaplain asked somewhat doubtfully if Catalin was hoping for an exorcism. This question incited a hysterical outburst from Catalin, who repeatedly screamed, "No exorcism, no exorcism. It has to stay inside." Due to prior experience with another agency inmate, a representative from the sheriff's office facilitated contact between Catalin and an agency representative. After a brief interview, the agency brought Catalin into custody where he remains. At this time, Catalin is the only confirmed case of demonic possession incarcerated at AHHNASCU. Catalin is a 34-year-old male approximately 5 feet 6 inches tall. One eye is brown and one is yellow. He suffers extensive chronic bruising on his chest, stomach, and back. He has a full-body matrix-like rash that has been described as web-like. Catalin is pleasant and cooperative, although he suffers from major depressive disorder and severe anxiety relating to the possibility that the entity inside him will escape. He has also expressed severe anxiety over the question of who or what will keep the entity contained once he dies. Given that Catalin is a essentially biological maximum security prison and that containment of his prisoner aligns with agency directives, he has been granted T-Class designation. Interview subject: the jar of clay. Classification: string, cooperative / destructible / Gaian / constant / moderate / unknown asterisk. Periodic re-evaluation required. Interviewer: Rachele B. Interview date December 3rd, 2024. Lying isn't always a sin, but I still don't forgive Robert for the lies he told. Robert lost his life. That's what his mother says. Robert lost his life. That's a lie. Robert didn't lose his life. He stole it from himself, but I get it. Sometimes a good lie is the only tether to your sanity, the lasso keeping your demons at bay. Maybe if Robert had told himself more lies, he'd still be alive, but maybe not, because because Robert already lied a lot. Lies like, I'm okay, you don't have to worry about me, everything's fine. Really, if I could, I'd say, screw you, Robert. Screw you for lying. Screw you for hiding. Screw you for letting me love you so much for so long. Screw you for loving me so much for so long. He used to say I was the only person who made him comfortable. Paradoxically, comfort made Robert uncomfortable. Whenever he felt too comfortable for too long, he ruined it. He ruined it for the last time by launching into a gloriously unhinged rant that ended with him telling me, "You're the only thing that feels like home and I love you so much, but I hate you even more and that will never stop." I don't think he was lying when he said that, why I left. His mom found him 9 days later, broke into his apartment, saw him slumped against his bathroom wall, and immediately took 7 pictures of his body that she texted to me along with the message, "Are you happy now, you freak?" The pictures were bad because he'd been dead for a while, but the decomposition wasn't the worst. The worst was the smallness of him. How flat, how hollow, how empty he looked. Not like there was nothing left, but like there had never been anything at all. His mom barred me from his funeral. I didn't hold it against her. She needed someone to blame, and strictly speaking, I am to blame for a lot of Robert's misery. But at the same time, holy crap, we never dated. We never even tried. We were too enmeshed, too damaged, and we knew each other too well. When you truly know someone and that someone truly knows you, it's not romantic, it's not beautiful, it's just terrifying. And even if that's not true, so what? The last thing Robert ever said to me was, "You're the only thing that's ever felt like home and I love you so much, but I hate you even more and that will never stop." And the last thing I ever said to him was, "Screw you, Robert." 6 days later, he was dead. 3 days after that, his mother found his body and sent me pictures. I stared at those photos for a long time. Then I watched The Land Before Time. That was Robert's favorite kid movie. That's why he named our cat Littlefoot. I thought watching it in memory of him would make me feel close to him, but it just made me sob until I thought I was going to throw up my own guts. A few days after that, his mom sent me the last text I ever got from her. "There's a bunch of your stuff at his apartment, so come get it before I burn it." I could think of nothing worse than entering Robert's death-suffused apartment, but curiosity is the leading cause of death for cats, and I am no exception. See, Robert and I never lived together. We were never even romantic. Enmeshed, yes. Devoted, of course. Codependent, you bet. But in love? Not really. God, I hope not. Anyway, Robert was almost dangerously protective of his private spaces, and his cheap apartment was no exception. I'd only ever been inside it twice, so I wanted to know how anything that was mine could have possibly ended up there. That's the only reason I went, curiosity. The scent of death was waiting for me when I opened the door, but it wasn't as strong as I'd feared. I drifted through his apartment like a ghost, traversing the liminal space it now occupied between Robert's home and an empty place. I wondered if his ghost was walking with me. The thought was infuriating. I crept through the living room, kitchen, hallway, even the bathroom with its body-shaped stain. I took more time than I should have. I didn't see anything that was mine. Until his bedroom, utilitarian and bare, colorless and impersonal. It made me ache. The only pop of color was a lilac moto jacket draped over a cardboard box. I recognized the jacket because I'd given it to him years ago, on the day I told him I was transitioning. That was also the day he screwed up beyond repair with Cassie and their daughter. I picked the jacket up. For half a second I was convinced he was inside it, growing back into existence in my arms, mostly because I could smell him, warm, with a faint undertone of bitter growth, like a dying garden in the dog days of summer. As his scent enveloped me, the room around me faded into a whirlwind of images, enfolding me into yet another liminal space, this time the one between memory and reality. That brings me to the real reason I didn't want to go to Robert's apartment. There's this thing I do. If I touch an object, and if that object is or was important to someone, then the memories attached to that object start projecting themselves in my head like a simulation. It sounds crazy. It is crazy. When I picked up Robert's jacket, I fell into one of the memories attached to it. Gray skies, bitter air swirling with snowflakes. I was sitting on the sidewalk with Robert. He was heartbroken and humiliated. He'd so badly wanted a family and had managed to make one, but he'd screwed it up just like he screwed up everything else. Cassie had the patience of a saint combined with the naivety singular to very young women intent on healing their damaged boyfriends, but Robert was too much even for her. She'd been right to leave him and he knew it, so there was nothing to say. Seeing him curled over himself and sobbing so hard his entire body shook was one of the worst moments of my life, and that's saying a lot. I shrugged out of my jacket and threw it over his shoulders, then drew him in for a hug as some stranger gawked at us. It was awkward. All my hugs are awkward. But Robert leaned in anyway and kept crying, tears hitting the jacket alongside snowflakes. Then the memory changed. Snowflakes faded to darkness, cold deep into warmth. Robert was sleeping, curled underneath that stupid coat. 1,000 images of 1,000 nights superimposed over each other, each almost but not quite identical. He slept with it, used it like a teddy bear. The scene evaporated when I threw the coat back onto his bed. Tears streamed down my face as a fresh wave of rage crashed inside my chest. I looked at the box again. It had my name written on it, Catalin. On top was a note, "Please don't remember the bad things." "Oh, screw you," I whispered. I recognized everything inside. The ragged stuffed Pikachu with a sunken face, the dusty blue ribbon from a spelling bee 20 years past, a hand-knitted orange scarf, a green collar with a silver tag that said Littlefoot on one side, and if found, contact Katarina or Robert with my childhood phone number listed underneath. The thought of him holding on to all these things for so long was too much. Beyond too much. Crushing. It was crippling. If I were strong, I'd have left that box and everything in it on the bed for his mother to burn. But I'm not strong, so I shrugged into the jacket. Snowflakes swirled again as his scent, so like a dead garden, crept over me and took the box to my car. Then I drove out to the carnival. Neither Robert or I ever left the town where we were born. It sucks, but living and dying in the same place does have perks like knowing all the awesome secret hangout spots. One of our spots was an abandoned carnival out in the canyon. 70 years ago, a carnival stopped in town the night before the most devastating earthquake in the county's history. All the performers died. A few of the animals survived, but they had neither ability nor inclination to pack away the game booths and rides. The big top is long gone, the prizes pilfered or rotted into the sand, but the structures remain, and the great rusted loop of the sketchiest looking roller coaster ever made still rises over the desert. Robert and I weren't in love, at least I don't think so. I hope not. We were enmeshed though, beyond enmeshed. The carnival isn't where it started, but it's relevant because it is the place where I first saw Robert's demon. Yes, his demon. A demon followed him around. A literal demon. I already told you I see memories when I touch things. I also see memories when I touch people. I always saw Robert's too, but after my mom died, I started seeing something else when I touched Robert, his demon. We were 10 and we'd snuck off to the carnival after school. I hugged him. I don't remember why anymore. When I pulled away, I saw the demon between us. It looked almost like his dad, just wrong. Like something pretending to be him, just way scarier. Before I knew it, the demon, the crooked, uncanny valley imitation of his father, slithered forward, pushing us apart. Then it wrenched Robert's mouth open. Before I could even react, Robert screamed and shoved me away. I know how it sounds. Even after we talked about it, after Robert calmed down, after told me how he'd seen that thing crawling after him every day for as long as he could remember, I didn't think much of it. I actually kind of thought we were both losing it, and I wasn't even worried it. That kind of hallucination made perfect sense to me, given that Robert's father killed my mother. See, when my dad walked out, Robert's father stepped up. He started dating my mom. I know having a parent move on is usually hard for kids, but I didn't care because I got to see Robert every day, until his dad killed my mom and then himself. Afterward, I visited Robert at his foster home whenever I could. All he did was sleep when I came over. He was afraid to sleep alone. Well, no, technically he was afraid to lay down. He was afraid he'd die if he laid down too long. This is because he watched his dad die flat on his back, drowning in his own blood from his self-inflicted gunshot wound. So whenever I came over, we sat back to back, leaning against each other. Then we looped our arms together. For weeks, that was the only way he could sleep, leaning against me because he knew I wouldn't let him fall. Anyway, that doesn't matter. What matters is this. The day I saw Robert's demon for the first time, Robert said, "It's my dad, and he keeps telling me to kill you, but I never would, Kat, never." I knew Robert would never hurt me. He was so relieved when I told him that. The day I picked up the box from Robert's apartment, I sat under the roller coaster remembering all of this. I fell asleep, half hoping the rusted, sand-scoured metal would collapse and crush me. It didn't. I went on with my life, only not really. In the weeks following Robert's death, I had to hold stuffed animals to help me sleep. I collect used stuffed animals because there are almost always happy memories attached to them, and because they're not my memories, they comfort me without any baggage. but grief is weird and one night I needed the baggage. I grabbed that sunken little Pikachu from Robert's box. The memory washed over me. A frozen winter's night so cold it takes your breath away. We were at a buffet with both sets of parents. Robert and I were misbehaving. Robert had beaten up the buffet mascot, which made me laugh so hard I gagged. Once seated, we got into a food fight. When my mom yelled at us, I yelled back, which made Robert laugh so hard that Dr. Pepper came out his nose and sprayed everything on the table. My father promised to let us play the claw machine if we'd shut up and behave. We loved claw machines, so of course we agreed. He gave us each $10 to play. Robert didn't win, but I got a small stuffed Pikachu. I gave it to him because he loved Pokemon. Reliving that memory was like holding Robert on one of his good days. The good days were the only days Robert and I ever held each other, and we didn't have many good days. I told you I see memories when I touch things and people. That's why I didn't shake your hand when you came in, and why I hate being touched. You think you're going in for a regular handshake when a wave of unspeakable trauma washes over you, and you have to smile like you didn't just mainline hell. I know that's why Robert barely let me touch him, and to be fair, I didn't ever let him touch me because Robert is the only person who saw into me the way I saw into him. I didn't like being seen any more than he did. That's why we fought at the end, because he saw into me at the exact wrong time. It was my birthday. Robert surprised me my mom's brownie recipe, and you know, it was my birthday. I was thinking about her anyway, and the brownies just drove it all home. I started wishing for what might have been, for the life I'd have if she was still in it. It made me cry. I don't usually cry. I wasn't even crying hard, but I was crying enough for Robert to notice. He came in for a hug before I could put my shields up. I will never forget his face. The shock, the guilt, the sadness, and the rage. I'll never forget his voice either, when he said, "No matter what I do or how long it's been, that's always going to be the first thing you think when you look at me. That's why you won't, why we'll never..." That's not why, Robert. I don't really know how we got from "that's not why" to "you're the only thing that ever felt like home and I love you, but I hate you even more." But we did. That's another reason I know lying isn't always a sin, because if Robert hadn't seen the truth in me that day, I think he would still be alive. The night after I held the Pikachu, I watched The Land Before Time again. It made me remember Littlefoot, our cat. That made me go back to Robert's box and pull out Littlefoot's collar. It's my favorite memory of all time, which is why I can barely stand to remember it. We were 6 years old, playing in the yard on a golden, impossibly hot day. We heard a pitiful, tiny meow and followed it to the alley behind my house. It was suffocatingly hot even in the shade where we saw the meower, a little gray cat. Robert named him immediately, and we went to bug my mom for a collar. She took us to buy a collar and even a name tag. It was a little green heart. Robert tenderly clasped it around Kitten's neck as it clambered into his lap, purring. I looked up. There, in the memory I knew so well, was something I had never seen before. Robert's demon, grinning at us across the yard. But instead of looking like a wrong version of Robert's dad, it looked like a wrong version of Robert. I dropped the collar back into the box, gasping like I'd just been plunged into ice water. I don't know what I thought. I'd only ever seen the demon when I touched Robert. Not in other memories, not in real life. Just when I touched Robert. So I decided that it was my mind playing tricks, turning Robert into a monster for leaving me. I didn't think about it again for a week. When I picked up the ragged little Pikachu for another devastation binge, I luxuriated in the claw machine memory again until I saw the way my dad looked at Robert. Distaste, pure distaste. Robert had adored my dad, but dad hated Robert and didn't even try to hide it. If lying isn't always a sin, then telling the truth sometimes is. My dad's open disdain for a child made him one hell of a sinner. As if to emphasize that, I saw the demon standing over his shoulder leering at me. Half its face looked like the wrong Robert monster, but half its face just looked like Robert, and that half was screaming. I dropped the Pikachu and put on the jacket. The snowy day memory descended, including the gawping figure on my periphery. But when I focused on that figure, it was Demon Robert. Feeling very frightened, I picked up the blue ribbon. 4th grade, exactly 3 weeks after his dad killed my mom. Robert's first day back at school. I'd been back for a week already, subsuming my grief in the school spelling bee, which I just won. I smiled as I marched off stage because it was the only way to keep from screaming. But the smile was breaking apart. Tears were welling up even as that awful grin spread so wide it felt like it was splitting my head in half. I found Robert in the crowd, locking on him like a drowning person on a life raft. He looked hollow and ancient, but when he saw me, he smiled back. When I sat by him, he started to cry. He was still smiling though, just like me. "What's wrong?" I asked. "I thought you wouldn't want to be my friend anymore." Why? My dad said so. After he died, he told me it's all my fault. I hugged him with particular fierceness, then pinned my ribbon onto his shirt. You're my best friend, Robert. That will never stop. No lie. No lie. As the words left my mouth, I saw the demon over his shoulder, half monster, half screaming Robert. I dropped the ribbon and picked up the scarf. I'd knitted it for him when we were 11. He wore it until junior high. I found myself transported to his foster home 20 years ago. We were on his narrow bed, sitting back to back with our arms looped and the scarf draped across both our shoulders. Cat. His voice reverberated through his back and into mine. I'm so scared. I see my dad every night. He keeps telling me to kill you. I looked over and saw Demon Robert in the closet. One half of his face was grinning, the other was screaming. Gasping, I tossed the scarf away and picked up the last thing in the box. A picture of his daughter Sadie. I recognized that picture. It had held pride of place on every bathroom mirror Robert had since the breakup. Why was it in my box? Surely he meant for Cassie to have it, or even his mom. Why me? I looked at that photo for what felt like a long time. Then I picked it up. The memory I saw was of Robert's suicide. He'd been holding it when he killed himself. I'm sorry, when he lost his life. As I stood over his bleeding body, screaming, something crawled out of him. A thing that looked like him, but like a broken version of him. A version of him with half a face that was his, and half a face that was a demon. Before I could move, that thing took my hands. The touch calmed me down because I knew that touch. Whatever else this thing was, it was at least partly Robert. That was enough to make me hug it. Help Sadie, he whispered. His voice was wrong but familiar, just like the rest of him. I can't keep it away from her, but you can. You're a jar of clay. You hold everything in and never let anything out. Unbidden, an image rose to mind of Sadie. Sadie with a face that was half hers and half grinning monster. It made me want to scream. How do I help her? By remembering the treasure, he said, and putting the bad things in and not letting them out. Then he was gone, and so was the memory. I was back in my room, clutching his daughter's baby picture and sobbing. He used to call me that, a jar of clay, some religious reference. His dad was pretty religious before, well, you know, I asked him to explain it once. He said a jar of clay is an everlasting receptacle, both for treasure and for things that need to be locked away. That's you, he said. It's a good thing, I promise. No lie, I asked. No lie. I still didn't really get it, but that didn't stop him from calling me a jar of clay. Anyway, it'd take too long to tell you everything that happened after I saw Robert's suicide memory. It would hurt too much besides, and this has already been so long and painful. I'm sorry. If I tell you more than the bare minimum, I won't be able to talk. This is all I can say. You know how I said Robert and I knew each other better than we knew ourselves. That's how I knew what he, or at least his ghost, or whatever it was, wanted me to do. He wanted me to share all the good memories with his daughter while making sure his demon didn't come for her. I tracked down everything of his that I could find. It was hard. His mother had already taken so much, and there was no chance that she'd let me into her house. Instead, I started where I could. My dad's house, where Robert and I spent so much time and left so much stuff over the course of our childhood. It was hard being there. It was hard when my dad wouldn't meet my eyes, and even harder when I accidentally caught him looking. I ignored him and got it to work. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I knew it when I found it. It was Robert's stuffed dog, an ancient stiff dog, kind of an heirloom. One his dad had before him, and his grandpa before that, and his great-grandfather before that. It was the only thing he'd been able to grab when CPS took him after the murder. The other kids at his foster home were jerks about it, so he hid it at my house and clearly forgot. When I picked up that dog, two things happened. First, I saw a memory from when we were 16. I was angry and giving him the silent treatment. That freaked him out. The silent treatment always freaked Robert out unless he was the one giving it. He was trying to make me tell him what was wrong. You know what sucks? It wasn't that I didn't want to tell him, it was that I couldn't. That's one of the problems I always had with him. One of the things I always did to him. He called me a jar of clay again. You're one heavy jar of clay. I wish I had half your stoicism, Cat. Really, no lie. That memory melted away and others melted in. I don't know how to explain these memories. I told you that touching someone is a surefire way to mainline trauma. When I touched that toy dog, I mainlined pure horror. Robert and his father and even his father, all carried and crushed by an overwhelming wave of horror, by a demon. His entire family, generation after generation, being stalked by this broken, grinning monster. Something that hunted them, that sank its claws in deepest, until it pulled those claws down and shredded them to ribbons. One of those ribbons was Robert's father killing my mom. An older ribbon was his great-grandfather beating beaten one of his own sons to death in a drunken rage, and one of those ribbons was Robert shooting himself in the head while holding his daughter's baby picture against his heart. But the memories showed me something even worse. This thing, this demon, this destroyer, wasn't just sinking its claws into Robert when he died. It was worming its way inside him. It was trying to take him over, to actually be Robert, because once it was Robert, it could, and promised to, do everything it wanted, and all it wanted was to destroy. It wanted to destroy his mom and Cassie. It wanted to destroy me. Most of all, it wanted to destroy Sadie, and it wanted to use Robert's hands. Robert fought, of course. Robert fought it his entire life, even before he knew what he was fighting. That was the reason he killed himself, because he was scared he was losing the fight, and he thought dying was the only way to protect who he loved. He took his own life to try and take out the monster, only he hadn't killed it. He'd only killed himself. I was crying so hard I didn't even notice my dad until he touched my shoulder. I jumped, thinking of demons crawling inside and commandeering my hands like a puppet master. My dad was looking at me, the first time he looked into my eyes in half a lifetime. Hey Qatar, Catalan, I wanted to tell you something. I patted the floor even though it was the last thing I wanted to do. He sat down like it was the last thing he wanted to do. When he saw the stiff dog in my hands, his mouth quivered. I wanted to tell you that a good man lives his life for other people. You've done that. This was the first time, the very first time, that he'd acknowledged me as a man. Robert did too, but I didn't. His voice got thick. I wasn't a good man. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, baby. He was right. If any of this was anyone's fault, it was his for leaving. I wanted to push him away. I wanted to spit in his face, to tell him he wasn't a good man, had never been a good man, would never be a good man, that he'd as good as killed my mother. Instead, I grabbed his hands. I understood instantly that I didn't have to tell him any of those things, because he already knew. You are Dad. To my horror, I started to sob. So did he. You're a good man, you always were. You're the best father anyone's ever had. It was a lie, every last word. But lying isn't always a sin. After that, I went to Cassie's house. I lied about grabbing Robert's things for his mother, but she wasn't fooled. The only person Robert's mom hates more than Cassie is me. That's probably why she let me in. But Cassie's always been good that why. It's why I've never been able to hate her, even when I desperately wanted to. Once again, I didn't really know what I was looking for until I saw it. A Build-A-Bear I'd bought Sadie for her 6th birthday. I looked around to make sure Cassie wasn't watching, then picked it up. Robert's memory, he and Sadie sitting on the floor. If I ever scare you, or if there's something you don't ever want to tell me or your mom, you tell Uncle Cat, okay? He'll do anything to help you. He'll always keep you safe. I know, Daddy. Demon Robert crept up beside me. Together we watched his memory. He didn't look like a demon anymore. Not even half of one. He just looked like Robert. I can't be you, Cat. I wish I could. I wish we could have been. But it ate me and it'll eat her. I thought I could save her, but I was wrong. You thought you could save me, but you were wrong. You can save her for me. Screw you, Robert, I said. Screw you. I threw the bear down and picked up something else. Anything else. Anything to not see the promise he made the daughter who wasn't mine, or the broken version of his dead self begging me to right his wrongs. What I touched was a baby toy. A gentle memory. Robert playing with Sadie in a pool of sunlight on a threadbare carpet. All sweet, all good, all bright, except for the demon lurking in the corner. I knew then what I had to do. What I wanted to do. Because Dad's right. A good man lives his life for other people. I don't know if I'm a good man. But Robert didn't know if he was a good man either, and he still lived his life for other people the very best he could. At that moment, Sadie walked in, hollow-eyed and lifeless as Robert had been at Spelling Bee Day all those years ago. I wiped my eyes and almost tried to smile, then thought better of it. Hi, Cat. She sat down across from me. She looked so much like Robert it took my breath away. She was 10, exactly the age he'd been when our parents died. Sadie, I said gently, your dad loved you more than anything. Her face crumpled. She shook her head, then started to get up. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the baby photo. Look. She looked at me, those eyes that were just like her father's filling with tears. Behind her, shimmering like a mirage, was an awful, familiar silhouette. The demon, a grinning monstrosity with no sign of Robert in its face. Her father's demon, her birthright coming into being to shred her like it had shredded her father. I had no time. I had to share the treasures, spill out all the treasure for other people to remember, so there'd be room to trap what could not be allowed to roam free. You see this picture? It's you on your 1st birthday. He kept it everywhere he went. Even though he wasn't here, he kept you with him. She gave me a look I'd seen on her father's face 10,000 times. That's why I knew exactly what to do, which was stuff the photo into her hands. She climbed clumsily to her feet and bolted, but at least she took the photo with her. Is it true? I looked up startled. Cassie was in the doorway. You don't have to lie for him, you shouldn't. I'm not lying. I wanted so badly to cry but couldn't. The only reason he stayed away is he thought you were better off without him, that's all. The way her face twisted broke my heart all over again. Why? I don't know. You're the only one he ever talked to. That's not true. He wrote his suicide note for you. Her voice was longing and loathing in equal measure. It was one sentence, just a single line telling me to remind you and Sadie how much he loves you. No lie. Only it was a lie. But when Cassie finally relaxed, I knew that it hadn't been a sin. We talked for a long time. When we were done, she gave me a hug. That's Cassie. No wonder Robert loved her. Then I went home and tried to make a plan. I knew what I had to do, but I wasn't sure how to do it. So I sat there for a while thinking, I didn't know what the monstrosity was. A demon, probably. Isn't that what it always is? A demon from the depths of hell come to torment the innocent. How do you defeat a demon? Having not stepped foot in a church since my mother died, I wasn't sure, but I'd absorbed enough religion and pop culture to know that Bibles and crosses were the first main line of defense. So I dug out my mom's Bible and crucifix and held them, expecting something. Power maybe, hope at least. But I felt nothing. It wasn't that they felt wrong, they just felt empty, inert, no strength, no energy, no hope, powerless, inanimate, dead, no, not dead, things that had never been alive in the first place. So I thought harder. What is a demon? Hatred, as far as I could tell anyway. What's the opposite of hate? And that gave me an idea. I went to Robert's box and picked up the Pikachu. Instead of memory descending, warmth flowed through my hands, living, moving, joyful, and powerful. So I stuffed the Pikachu in my back pocket. I pinned the spelling bee ribbon over my heart. I shrugged into the lilac jacket, heavy and reassuring on my shoulders. Most importantly of all, hanging from a chain where a normal person might wear a saint's medal, was Littlefoot's name tag. It felt warm and powerful in the hollow of my throat. These things felt right, they felt strong, and they felt true. Not exactly the stuff of which the armor of God is made, but they were reminders of the truest, fiercest love I've ever received and ever given. And that was armor enough. I drove out to the place it all began, our carnival right under the rusting roller coaster. It was waiting for me. I wasn't afraid. I marched across the sand. Scraps of warm, loving memory drifted around me as the demon shimmered into being, a stark, eternal darkness against the star-swept sky, and I felt it. It was evil, but it was power. True, incomprehensible power. Overwhelming, ravenous strength crashing over me and under me and around me like a cataclysmic earthquake, tearing my force field of memory, my shield of love, to shreds and the shreds into nothing. I wasn't mainlining trauma, I was mainlining hate. I knew then why Robert had been doomed to fail. This was a curse, this was a monster, this was darkness, this was the monster under the bed, this was selfishness, this was destruction, this was something other. This was the Borg, this was Morgoth, this was hatred incarnate, this was the total absence of love. This was an obscenity older than time, an abomination that wanted to sink its teeth into the throat that sings the song of creation and tear it out. Love was nothing against it. I was nothing against it. It was going to win, and its prize was worse than death, to take me over and use my hands to destroy. And it was all Robert's fault, as his demon's true form bore down on me, swelling and billowing across the sky, blotting the stars and laying bare the folly of my plan. Terror overwhelmed me, and despair, and hatred. But I didn't want to die that way. Not in the dark, hating the person I loved more than anything in the world. Without thinking, I cupped Littlefoot's name tag in both my hands. Warmth swallowed me, and light, and it was summer afternoon, and Robert was tenderly clasping the collar across our kitten's neck. You're not a stray anymore, he says. You belong to us now, Littlefoot, and we love you. The abomination slammed into me with the force of a tsunami right as Robert looped his arms through and pressed his back to mine. And then we really were 10 years old again. A lifetime rewound. A lifetime to relive and do everything right so he and I and everyone would finally be okay. okay. My mom would live and we would save his dad. We had time. All I had to do was wait until the darkness passed through me and moved on. Only it wasn't passing through me. It was hitting something hard, something solid and piling up, clinging to me, filling me, suffocating me, drowning me, and it was because of Robert. Because Robert was holding on and blocking it, keeping it inside me, keeping it from going away. Then it was done. Robert let go. When my knees gave way, he caught me and helped me to the ground. Only it wasn't Robert. It couldn't be Robert. Robert was dead. Only when I turned to look, his eyes were staring into mine. Number not his eyes. Sadie's. What? I couldn't breathe. What was wrong with my chest? Honey, what are you doing here? Sadie's voice was shaking. It's my dad. He told me you were here and memories crashed over me. Robert's voice, broken and ragged and terrified. My dad told me to kill you. My dad told me to help you. For a wonderful second, I was light and whole and happy and above all triumphant. Robert had broken the curse in more than one way. If he just held on a little longer, I could have told him. I could tell him that we all needed him, that none of us were better off without him, that we all loved him more than he could ever. Darkness drowned me then, and hate. Hate that I could never have imagined. Hate that devours, hate that corrodes, hate that eats its way out to destroy. I don't know what Sadie saw in my face. I don't want to know. I just know that it made her run away. That it made Cassie send a text that said, if you ever come near my daughter again, I might actually kill you. I haven't seen either of them since. I don't think I ever will. Robert's demon hasn't escaped. The hatred is still here, right here. I'd say I'm mainlining hatred incarnate, only you can't mainline yourself. This is what I get to be now until I die. A jar of clay. A prison for a demon that isn't even mine. It's all Robert's fault and I hate him for it. I hate him. More than he could have feared. More than he could ever imagine. That's what I'd say to him right now. Screw you, Robert. You were the only thing that felt like home and you burned yourself down anyway. I hate you. I will always hate you. I hate you more than you could ever know. I hate you so much, but I love you even more and that will never stop. No lie.
If you enjoyed these stories, please consider subscribing and liking this video. Let me know your thoughts of these stories in the comments below. I frequently talk to my viewers there. But anyways, I hope you were creeped out.
Just kidding. Stay safe.